Shabbat, and we've got our first graders leading us tonight. And in just a moment, we're going to hear them sing, and we're going to begin on page 10. Until then, let's just take a few deep breaths.
Hine ma tovu manai
Shabbat angels. Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Mimelech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Noachem B'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mimelech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mimelech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzidchem B'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mimelech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch
Wow, what a treat. Thank you, first graders. Welcome, everybody. First of all, I was at a conference with a bunch of wonderful rabbinic colleagues, and then this morning, right after I got back from the conference, I got the email. By the way, from one of my colleagues, I tested positive for COVID. Sorry, guys. So I'm wearing a mask just to be on the safe side, but I'm feeling fine and doing fine, but that's the reason for that. It is so great to see you all, and again, welcome to our first grade families, and welcome to our congregation. Welcome to you who are joining from home. Thank you so much for being part of the Stephen Wise Temple community. And I want to remind folks at home, if you are in the Los Angeles area and you can make it up here on a Friday night, please do. You're going to enjoy it, and we will enjoy your presence and your company. Parents especially, and I know we have some grandparents here as well. Is it true that these first graders are delicious? Yes. Are they talented? Of course. Do they know Hebrew fluently? Yes. Can they also translate every prayer? Of course. We also, though, I want you to know, have our incredible camera crew and Andre. They're recording everything. So what I want you to do now, parents, you got some good shots of the opening, beautiful prayers. I saw it. Now put your phones away. Put your phones away. Don't stand up and block anyone. Just be present. That's a good thing to teach our kids too. Sometimes we can photograph and memorialize, and sometimes we can just be present. So parents, kids, put the phones away, and we're just going to be together. I'm so grateful to our band. It's great to have our band here. It is so great to have our music director, Tali Tadmor, our cantor, Emma Lutz. We're joined by our rabbis, Sari Laufer, who's going to be teaching a little bit later, and Ron Stern. We have our school community here, including members of our administration, and we have our first grade teachers. And I want to invite all of our first grade teachers to come up to light our Shabbat candles. You teachers, come up. You, right over here, you bring light into the lives of your students. You bring light into our school, and our tradition teaches us that Torah is light, and you bring the light of wisdom and understanding, of goodness and joy into the lives, not just of our first grade, but I'm thinking more collectively of our teachers into the entire world. If you're joining from home, you can turn to page 2 for our candle blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'adlik ner shel
Shabbat Shalom. Wish each other a Shabbat Shalom. And if you want, you can just kind of turn to the person next to you and say Shabbat Shalom. If you're joining from home, you can put a Shabbat Shalom greeting in the chat. We're going to continue with our Lecha Dodi prayer. It's found on page 20. Page 20. Okay, now let's bring it down. And our first graders are going to lead us in Lecha Dodi.
Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibur echad, ishmi'anu el hamiuchad. Adonai echad u'shema echad, Hashem u'tiferet v'litehila. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם לסוכה, סוף המעשה במחשבה תחילה. lecha Dodi likrat kalai, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
We all stand in honor of the Sabbath Queen.
Bori v'shalom, ateret malam, am b'simcha u'b'tzona, toch emunei am segula. Bori chala, bori chala. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
Please turn to page 28 if you're joining from home, page 5 in our digital flip book for our call to worship. we can all have a seat for a moment. And I want to invite my colleagues, Rabbis Laufer and Stern and Rabbi Hersher, to come forward. And I want to invite Aleister to come up. You know, and this is such a special night for all of us. Aleister Bucco today joined Am Yisrael, joined the Jewish family. And what's important for everybody here to understand, and for our first graders to understand as well, is that there are many pathways to Judaism. Some people are born into Judaism and they embrace it, and they're gifted with wonderful teachers like our first grade teachers, and they're gifted with parents who are supporting them on their Jewish journey. Others grow up from a Jewish family, but maybe they were denied their heritage. They grew up in a place where they weren't allowed to embrace their Judaism. And some people come to Judaism because they choose it all on their own. And in fact, this week's Torah portion, we learn about Moses' father-in-law, Yitro, and there are different traditions about Yitro, but there's a tradition in the Talmud from the rabbis that Yitro himself ultimately chose to be part of the Jewish people. So there's a nice connection here. So Aleister, come all the way over here. When people join the tradition, it's also very nice for the gene pool when they're super tall and really smart and just all around amazing. So Aleister, it has been such a pleasure. I know I speak for Rabbi Hersher, Rabbi Laufer, Rabbi Stern, the entire community when I say learning with you and getting to know you has been an incredible joy for us. And I'm going to ask Rabbi Stern to grab the Torah scroll, and I'll ask you to stand back up. Aleister's going to hold the Torah, and he, along with our first graders, is going to lead us in the words of Shema Yisrael. And today, and Aleister, come right here in front. And today, he said those words as we went to the mikveh together. Aleister, you stand before the commanding presence of the Torah, the Jewish people's most cherished treasure. It has led us on the way and guided us since we received it. It has been carried when we fled from destruction and during the times of our greatest rejoicing. We place this Torah in your arms. Take it to your heart as you, along with our community, recite words of Shema, the words on the lips of the Jew until the final moments of life. It is the affirmation that has sustained the Jewish people since our beginnings. You can all be seated.
That's nice. Shh, shh. Stay standing. Stand up.
We continue with words of Ve'ahavta. You can find them on page 36.
ואהבת את
Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'otecha v'hayu hadivarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shokvecha uv'kumecha וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
When we sing the Michamocha, the song of freedom, the song of liberation, what we're remembering is not the story of one person leaving Egypt, not the story of 3 people leaving Egypt, but the story of a people. The tradition says 600,000 people left with families and kids and oxen, and they crossed the sea and went into the desert. And as I'm looking out here and I'm seeing probably one of the larger crowds we've had since the pandemic, I'm reminded of what it means to be together, to celebrate, to sing, to sit shoulder to shoulder, to hear each other's voices, to smile with each other, to celebrate moments in people's lives. And that's what this song is about, the Michamocha. It's a song of celebration, not just of freedom, but the celebration of a people that gathers together to celebrate those sacred moments. The Hashkivenu, if you have a prayer book, is on page 42. If you're watching from home, it's on page 8. You know that feeling when you snuggle into your bed and you slip into your pillow and you just feel warm and peaceful and calm, and you close your eyes and you know that you're going to wake up the next morning refreshed after, I hope I'm not putting you to sleep, after a good night's sleep.
I haven't had a refreshing night of sleep because I have a 3-month-old.
A couple of months,
so.
yeah. Well, remember that feeling.
Yeah.
And it's that's what Hashkivenu is about. It's about the sheltering peace of God's presence. It's about the warmth of security. It's about that feeling we have that we trust that everything's going to be all right when the sun comes up in the morning. And so as we sing, if you have someone near you that you love, hold them close. Sing them this blessing of peace and comfort, and know that you'll wake up to see them smiling at you in the morning.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom V'ha'amidenu shomreinu shomreinu lechaim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom V'ha'amidenu shomreinu shomreinu lechaim
We offer a prayer for healing. You can find those words on page 253. We give thanks to God for the gift of health, and these words remind us not to take our own health for granted, to remember to take care of ourselves. And I always tell the first graders, and I'll share this little wisdom with you: get plenty of sleep, eat good, healthy food, stay home if you're not feeling well. Take care of yourself and others so that we can all be healthy. And for people whom we know are recovering from illness, let's reach out to them, give them a call, visit, bring them something good to eat. Let them know that they are not alone, that they are loved. Let's give thanks for the gift of health and pray for health for all those who are in need of healing. Refuah Shlema, page 253.
Courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach Imoteinu Mekor Avraham Avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Earlier today, our first graders got to make a bunch of animal noises for me. They got to pick a favorite animal. And then they learned they could tell you the first sound of the 10 Commandments. Tomorrow morning, when we open the Torah, we read those 10 commandments at a Shabbat Yitro. And the very first sound, as our first graders learned earlier today, is the sound, pardon me, Simon and Garfunkel, it's the sound of silence. That first letter is an aleph, which is a silent letter in Hebrew. And so the first sound that gives us those instructions, that gives us that direction into the world, is just an opening, a possibility. So in the evening, the Amidah, the central prayer of our service, is also said silently. And I was thinking to myself, I said to our first graders, and I'm thinking, looking here, that we live noisy lives. Either because we have lots of small humans running around in our world and they, turns out, make a lot of noise, or because there's the constant sound of traffic or helicopters, whatever it is, we live noisy lives. And so there is such a gift of that silence and such a gift of that possibility. So we're going to invite you to rise as you are able. The Amidah, the silent Amidah, begins on page 48, page 10 if you're joining us in the flip book at home. And we invite you to remain standing. You can offer the words in the prayer book that go to page 62 or the words of your own heart. And as you finish your Amidah, we invite you to be seated.
all be seated. Mrs. Tammy Weiser, our amazing head of school, loves nothing more than being with our children, which is good because it's a nice match with your job. And Mrs. Weiser, you are going to take our first graders out and you're going to read them a story while our own Rabbi Sari Laufer gives a sermon. Is that correct?
I am, and I'm going to invite any siblings who would like to take a little break, and we're going to tiptoe very quietly down to Plotkin Chapel. Miss Kleinman's going to help us gather everybody.
Just watch how quietly they tiptoe.
And we're going to go down to
be
Plotkin
amazing.
Chapel for a story. Parents, we'll be back. How long should we come back? When should we come?
In about 15 minutes.
15 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so first graders, you're going to go out with Mrs. Weiser and Mrs. Kleiman, tiptoeing silently, ever so quietly. And they're going to tell you a story, and any siblings can come along with. And Rabbi Laufer's going to come up to the bima. And while that quiet tiptoeing is happening, parents, you're welcome. You're welcome.
I'm gonna just give it a minute. You know, when I talked about that silence at Mount Sinai, I think that's exactly what it sounded like. I figure with, 600,000 people, the legends say, it had, that probably was exactly the silence. They'll be back, I promise. Oh, she got snacks, though, so, So when I was in first grade, just like that, a boy in my class kissed me during gym class. I know, scandal. But the real scandal was that I got punished and sent out to the hallway. And I was telling this story at dinner with friends recently, and I paused and I said, I guess that was really the beginning of my feminist awakening. And it wasn't until many years later, encountering Torah, that I confronted another moment, a different sort of exclusion that called out with the same injustice as being punished for Joey's first grade choices. Sorry, Joey, not you. Tomorrow morning, as I said, when we open the Torah, we'll prepare once again to stand at Sinai, to experience revelation and receive Torah. And as with all big and covenantal moments in our lives, whether it's marriage, birth, b'nai mitzvah, the first grade Shabbat, we need to prepare ourselves. We can't just show up. And the Torah gives really clear instructions for those preparations. Go to the people, God tells Moses, and tell them to get ready. Make sure, Moses, that they stay pure, and today and tomorrow, and make sure they wash their clothes. Keep them safe, Moses. Don't let them go up to the mountain or even touch its border. Sure, Moses nods, and then heads down the mountain to give these warnings to the people. In fact, it says, Vayered Moshe minaha el ha'am, vayikadesh et ha'am. Moses came down from the mountain to the people and warned the people to stay pure, and they washed their clothes. But then one verse later, just one line later, the moment that stopped me in my tracks when I first encountered it and continues to make me stumble year after year, anytime I read it or teach it. Vayomer el ha'am, Heyu nechonim l'shloshet yamim al tigshu el isha. And he said to the people, be ready for the third day. The men among you should not go near a woman. Judith Plaskow is one of the world's foremost feminist theologians and the author of Standing Again at Sinai, a book that changed my life and my understanding of our text and tradition. And in its introduction, she writes, there's perhaps no verse in the Torah more disturbing to the feminists than Moses' warning to the people in Exodus 19:15. Be ready for the third day, do not go near a woman. She writes, for here, at the very moment that the Jewish people stand at Mount Sinai ready to enter into the covenant, not the covenant with the individual patriarchs, but presumably with the people as a whole, Moses seems to address the community only as men. And she continues, noting that Moses does not say, like he could, men and women don't go near each other. Instead, she writes, at the central moment of Jewish history, women are invisible. It is not their experience that interested the chronicler or informed and shaped the text. Reading her book in college, I understood this fundamental question as, how can I access this text, this tradition, this community, if I was excluded at its most foundational moment? And as you might have guessed, I have largely dedicated my life to answering that question. But this is not only a feminist question, and it's not only a question for the momentous occasion of Sinai. So this is not a thought exercise. I want you to actually do it. Raise your hand if you've ever felt like an outsider, left out, left behind. Okay. And raise your hand if you have kids, if your child has ever come home and told you that they were excluded or made fun of by a classmate or a friend. And what happens, do you think, when that happens over and over again? February is, in case you didn't know, Jewish Disability Awareness and Inclusion Month. It's also Black History Month. Julia Watts-Belzer is a rabbi, an academic, and a spiritual teacher who works at the intersections of disability studies, feminist Jewish ethics, and environmental justice, which seems like a lot put all together. And she tells the story of a colleague who, upon looking at facts from recent climate disasters, looking at stories of New Yorkers trapped in high-rise apartment buildings, mostly low-income New Yorkers, for days after Hurricane Sandy, or elderly nursing home residents in Florida who died from extreme heat when the institutions didn't evacuate before Hurricane Irma, or disaster warnings that over the years have been inaccessible to deaf communities. She said her colleague threw up his hands. And she writes that he said, it's terrible, he told me, but what can you do? Some people just aren't going to make it. And she writes, once I got over my outrage, I realized that my colleague had unwittingly named a core problem facing those of us organizing for justice, the assumption that some folks simply aren't cut out to survive. So all of us who raised our hands earlier, all of us who have at some point in our life felt vulnerable or outside, let that be our own canary in the coal mine. Let that remind us and inspire us to heed what is Belzer's call to action that she takes from disability justice advocates, no body is disposable, or what she takes from our tradition that all bodies are divine. The most repeated commandment in Torah is one that actually does not appear in the 10 Commandments that we chant tomorrow. We rabbis, collectively, here and elsewhere, love to remind you that love the stranger and remember the stranger are repeated 36 times in the Torah. More than the command to love God, more than the command to love or honor your parents, We are asked to see the person we might be tempted to ignore, the one who does not belong to us, maybe the person who does not fit in. And not only the stranger, in fact. We are commanded time and again to protect the orphan and the widow. We are called to give voice to those whose own might have been ignored or overlooked. We are called to share power with those who might have less or have none. But almost more important than the call is the why. Why are we asked to do this? And it says over and over, Ki gerim hayitam, because we were strangers in the land of Egypt, because we know the heart of the stranger, because that was us once before, and we know it could be us at any moment. The enduring understanding of the Exodus is meant to be empathy, and the ideology of the Exodus is meant to be inclusion, and the result of that revelation at Sinai should be responsibility. Now, many of you, if you kids have been Clay Kodesh, have heard me tell stories on Friday mornings, whether in AMC or this year in our kinder and first grade services. And you may have noticed, because it is not accidental, that I often return to these lessons: empathy and inclusion and responsibility. I often remind our young friends that it is their job, along with growing and learning, but maybe their most important job, to notice which friends might be sitting alone, or which friend might seem sad, or it is their job to notice who doesn't get invited to birthday parties, or who gets teased about the way that they look, or what they like to play or dress. And for us grown-ups, I actually think we're supposed to notice the same. Because it starts early, both the exclusion and the empathy. Because all bodies are divine, and no body is disposable. Because we know the heart of the stranger, because we have been the stranger. Shabbat Shalom.
So Rabbi Sari's job is to go collect your kids, so prepare yourselves, they're coming back. You enjoyed this? If you like this moment? Okay, we can drag it out a little more. I'm sure Miss Weiser is having a great time reading her 5th book to your kids. I'm getting a new talit. You know, we rabbis, we go through talitot, kind of like people go through suits, right? Because you wear them a lot. So I'm getting a new talit, and I'm keeping this tag, this atara, on my new talit. And I was talking to the artist about it a little bit today. And if you look on page 258, the passage from Isaiah, from which this comes, is in the middle of that page. There are 2 prayers for our country on that page. I'm going to read the first one. And I'm just going to set the scene for a second. Isaiah spoke these words probably 2,800 years ago to the exiles in Babylon, people who had been separated from their land, people who were longing to go back to the land of Israel. And he turns to me, doesn't say merely words of comfort. He says, all those prayers you make, all that piety you show, that's not what I want. What I want, he says, is the following. And I read this as a prayer for our country because it serves as a reminder to us that prayer is aspirational, that the words of the prophets in antiquity brought comfort to the people and they brought challenge. And so here's Isaiah's. Thus says Adonai, this is what I desire, to unlock the fetters of wickedness and untie the cords of lawlessness, to let the oppressed go free, to break off every yoke. Share your bread with the hungry and take the wretched poor into your home. When you see the naked, give clothing, and do not ignore your own kin. If you banish the yoke from your midst, the menacing hand, the evil speech, if you offer compassion to the hungry and satisfy the famished creature, and now here's the line that's on my talit, then your light shall shine in the darkness. Let that be our prayer and let that be reflected in our actions. Prayer for Israel on page 259.
Avinu Shabashamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'go'alo, Barechem Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmichat Ge'ulatenu.
Join me, please. O Heavenly One, protector and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shielded beneath the wings of your love, spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. We all say, Amen.
We'll invite you to rise as we make Kiddush. We're going to invite our first grade room parents to come up, Limor Poldar and Tori Praver. Thank you both for everything that you do to make all the magic happen for our first graders. We're on page 5.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotov v'rotzavanu. V'shabbat kodsho be'ava u'bratzon hinchilanu, zikaron le'maseh v'reishit. כי הוא יום תפילו למקראי קודש, זכר לציון מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה Baruch atah Adonai Kaddish Shabbat l'chaim. תודה.
Now we're going to remain standing, and I know that we have our first graders here, but we also have some students who are second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So not our first graders, but if you are an older sibling of one of the first graders, you're going to come with me to the ark to help me open the ark. First graders, you go back to your parents, and everybody else remains standing. We're on page 282. Anyone who's older than first grade gets to come up with me.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורות לנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
Can all be seated, please? And kids, now's the time that you go back to your parents or grandparents or caregivers, who's ever here with you. Everybody go back to your parents. And we're going to all need to get real quiet. Shh. And parents, we need your help with this. It's time for our prayer of memory. And we want everybody to be quiet now. So let's all have a seat again. I'm going to invite you to look on page 291 with me, page 291, as we prepare for Kaddish at home. It is hard to sing of oneness when the world is not complete, when those who once brought wholeness to our life have gone, and naught but memory can fill the emptiness their passing leaves behind. But memory can tell us only what we were. Thank you. It's hard. There's going out and coming back in. But let's all get quiet. Thank you. Memory can tell us only what we were in company with those we loved. It cannot help us find what each of us alone must now become. Yet no one is really alone. Those who live no more echo still within our thoughts and words, and what they did is part of what we have become. We do best homage to our dead when we live our lives more fully, even in the shadow of our loss. For each of our lives is worth the life of the whole world, and each one is the breath of the ultimate one. And affirming the one, we affirm the worth of each one whose life now ended brought us closer to the source of life, in whose unity no one is alone, and every life finds purpose. You can turn in your prayer books to page 294. Let's get real quiet, please. Our prayer of memory is an opportunity for loved ones to, if you're joining from home, put the name of a loved one if you want in the chat of our online community. And we are sharing with one another the names of loved ones who have died in recent days. So if you have suffered a loss in the last 7 or 30 days, a period of Shiva or Shloshim, please rise. If this marks the first year of mourning the loss of a loved one, please rise. And if this Shabbat marks the Yortzeit, the anniversary of the death of a loved one, please rise. And I want to invite everybody to stand in solidarity with our mourners as we say these words of gratitude and praise to God for the gift of life. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba.
Amen.
V'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei l'chol Beit Yisrael. B'galau v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach le'alam lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudashah barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechemata da'amiran be'ama v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama Rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May the one who makes peace in the high places make peace for us here on earth, for us and all Israel and all humanity. As we say together, Amen, I'll invite you to have a seat. I want to express my tremendous gratitude to our first graders. So let's do one more round of silent applause to our children who led us so beautifully. And you know, it was a long and full day for our first graders. They were here bright and early for learning, and they learned all day long, which takes a lot of energy. And then they went home. Some of them even showered. They got their weekly bath. It's amazing. And then they came back, and here it is, and they're still leading us, and so we're so grateful to them. Grateful to our first grade teachers and our amazing Wise School administrators, and thank you especially Mrs. Weiser, Mrs. Kleiman, everybody who helped our kids have their wonderful story, and thank you Mrs. Clement for everything that you do for our school. To our amazing director of music, Tali Tadmore, and this band, which is second to none, not just synagogue bands, not just worship bands. We're talking the great bands of all time, second to none. So thank you, Larry and Yaron and Jeff, for everything you do. Rabbi Sari, Rabbi Ron, Rabbi Eli Hersher, thank you all for your leadership and for being with us. Aleister, thank you for letting us share this simcha with you. And make sure everybody afterwards wish Aleister a mazel tov. And Cancer Emma, we missed you so much during your maternity leave. And boy, are we glad you're back.
So happy.
And you're going to take us out. Thanks to our crew and to everybody for keeping us safe, Officer King, for our amazing technicians who make it possible for people to stream this service all over the world. Thank you, Roz and Andre and Jay and Brian. We're grateful to you all. What are we going to conclude with?
Thank you, Rabbi. We're at the bottom of this page, 294, Oseh Shalom, a prayer for peace. Kids, I know you know this. If
Join
you're still
with
here.
us.
Oseh Shalom b'mromav. Oseh Shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
All right, school students, stay for 1 minute. Wise families, stay for 1 minute. The rest of our congregation, Shabbat Shalom. Wise schools, stay in for 1 minute. We're going to tell everybody what we're doing. All right, wise families, it is open seating. We are not going to go to the buffet. We're just going to sit down. We'll do a hamotzi and we'll start dinner. So please walk in and find a seat. Not to the buffet. We're going to do hamotzi first. We'll see you inside.